I can't quite work out this vape ban. The suggestion that I've heard is to cast a cloud or a shadow over what's going on in the House of Lords today, which will be more thrashing around of Rishi's difficult Rwanda bill. So if it's that, that at least explains it. But this is, banning vapes completely, disposable vapes completely. That's classic nanny-stateism. That's not supposed to be what the Tories are about. There's already a law that bans children under the age of 18 from buying these things. There's a £2,500 fine on shopkeepers should they break that law. Surely that's enough. And if you really want to get tough on it, why not just up the fine to 10,000 or something? What is this all about?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I mean, I think, look, vaping, if you vape, if you are a vapor because you were a former smoker, that is a good thing because we know that the health impacts of smoking is obviously more severe than vaping. However, the way in which they are currently packaged, the way in which they are sold, yes, you're absolutely right. You can't sell a vape to someone that's under the age of 18, but the fact that we're seeing that 10% nearly of 11 to 15-year-olds have access to these vapes on a daily basis because of the way that they are marketed, because of the flavouring, and they are nicotine substances. The idea that you're going to have a number of young people being hooked effectively on nicotine, I don't think is a good thing and something that we should stop.
I think it's depressing to see a Tory Prime Minister doing this, following his ludicrous plan that you can smoke if you were born in 2009, but you can't smoke if you were born in 2010, that kind of thing. I just think that's not what we look for to a Tory government for. This is nanny-stateism. Leave us alone. We'll make our own decisions.
Well, I can understand the sentiment of that. Of course I can. But I think, if you look back in history, whether it's sort of, the seat belt or whether it was smoking in public places or smoking in pubs and clubs, OK, yes, people at the time said that was slightly nanny-state and interventionist, but people now, broadly, the population, accept it and welcome it because it's a good thing. And I think they will do on vaping.
My question in all of this is I've looked into vaping and read whatever scientific reports are out there on it, and I can't find much evidence that this is particularly dangerous for adults. I really haven't found one sort of, this is the silver bullet report that says vaping is dangerous, it gives people cancer, it causes X, Y and Z health conditions. And there have been numerous investigations now done with sample sizes of 2,000, 4,000 people at a time. And if an adult chooses to vape, then fine. But this is a blanket ban altogether.
Yeah,
there are alcohols which are, in pretty, fruit flavours in pretty bottles and cans. Are those going to be banned now as well?
Well, I think that your first point is absolutely right, and that's the problem. Because vaping hasn't been around all that length of time, there just isn't the study to look at the long-term health defects of vaping. Therefore, that doesn't mean it's a good thing. It should be sort of, looked into, and you should have that time and research before you bring something in. So banning it, I think, is probably the right thing to do until you actually have that evidence and that data.
Well, Liz Truss, Rishi's predecessor at number 10, she tweeted, "The government should abandon its profoundly unconservative plans for the ban on tobacco sales to those born after the 1st of January 2009. A Conservative government should not be seeking to extend the nanny state. It only gives succour to those who wish to curtail freedom." That's Liz Truss's viewpoint. I've got some sympathy with that. But what do you think? We are asking you. After he let's start that again. Come on, Kevin, put your teeth back in. After he announced a ban on disposable vapes, is Rishi Sunak a nanny state Prime Minister who doesn't trust us to make our own health decisions? Let us know what you think. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text us Right Talk at the beginning of your message and send it to 87222, or you can tweet us on X at TalkTV. Thank you very much, Alex. I
added some to the pantomime. I hope you noticed and appreciate that.
Yeah, I try to copy you sometimes, but I'm not as good at it.
Oh, well,
as you,
the man with the most expressive arms in television.
Yeah, I'll leave the performance up to you.
Right, to the top story now, and Rishi Sunak's plans to ban disposable vapes and introduce new age limits for buying cigarettes could spark yet another Tory rebellion as former Prime Minister Liz Truss leads a group of MPs planning to vote against the scheme.
But ministers say the proposals are part of a government effort to end the epidemic of nicotine addiction among children. Speaking at a school in Darlington this morning, the Prime Minister defended his policy.
My job as Prime Minister is to do what I believe is right for the long term of our country. And if you talk to any parent or teacher, as I've been doing here at this school in Darlington this morning, they'll talk to you about the worrying rise in vaping amongst children. Now, children shouldn't be vaping. We don't want them to get addicted. We still don't understand the full long-term health impacts of vaping, so it's right that we take strong action to stamp this out.
Let's speak now to the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Well, Tom, you could argue to the Prime Minister, well, you're getting all tough on it now. How come you allowed it to sort of unfold in the first place? This just kind of crept up on us, didn't it? Suddenly, we've got a generation of kids hooked on nicotine, smoking these brightly flavoured kind of contraptions, which are not at all good for them. But secondly, this is what Liz Truss is indicating, is that this isn't really what you expect of a Conservative government, is it? This is nanny-stateism. Nobody wants kids to smoke nicotine. Nobody wants people to get hooked on vapes. But my suggestion would be we're all grown-ups. We can make decisions for ourselves and we can make health decisions for our children. We don't need a Conservative Prime Minister to start sticking his nose into what should be our personal details.
No, I couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, there's always been a sort of paternalistic strand in Tory party thinking. I also think these sorts of policies are very kind of Blairite, which is what politicians like Rishi Sunak, that's really their kind of main inspiration. The kind of politics of lifestyle has been around with us for some time. But I think that's exactly right. There is a problem here insofar as we don't want 14-year-olds getting hooked on nicotine or buying these vapes. But it is already illegal for them to purchase and to vape them. The answer, of course, would be to toughen up the enforcement, to make sure that we're cracking down both on the shops that are selling this, as well as the fact that there has been a trade in disposable vapes coming in predominantly from China in recent years. 4 million of them were seized at the border last year. So we should get on top of these things. Of course we should. What we shouldn't do is ban them outright, because of the fact that every time you encroach upon vaping, whether you're taxing it, whether you're limiting the flavors, whether you're banning disposables in this case, the evidence is pretty clear by this point, is that it pushes adults in particular back towards smoking. And vaping has been such a miracle for getting people off of smoking. We shouldn't do anything that leads us towards that thing. So yes, of course, no one wants young people to be hooked on vapes, disposable or otherwise, but they already are illegal to be purchased by them. Why don't we just enforce the law rather than make up new ones that affect everyone?
Yeah, I mean, what I don't understand is if this was based upon some big new medical research or a stonking report that says that vaping is dangerous for you, I could understand it a bit more. But given that report hasn't yet to materialise, I don't understand why all of a sudden this is a blanket ban. As someone who occasionally partakes in the odd vape, but I'm not a smoker, and I don't go around snorkeling a vape like a lot of people I know might do, why do I have to now give that up? I don't understand.
Well, you're right, because at the root of all this is a question about personal choice and liberty. But even if we just focus on the health side of it, I mean, I think the jury is very much in now on vaping. Yes, there's going to be longer term studies and so on, but according to the NHS, their conservative estimate is that it's 95% safer. And I dare say that's probably pretty conservative. You've got organisations like Cancer Research UK who have come out against banning disposable vapes because they're worried that it will slow progress in driving down smoking rates. Action on Smoking, who are a very nanny state organisation, very anti-smoking, very happy that it's being banned. They are worried about the unintended health consequences of cracking down on this in particular. And even with young people, again, taking as read the idea that we don't want 11 or 12 or 15-year-olds being hooked on nicotine in any form. Them being taking up vaping is a relatively nice problem to have because of the fact that smoking rates amongst that age group have really plummeted. It's about 1% of 11 to 15-year-olds now regularly smoke. And that's really shot down. Amongst 18 to 24-year-olds, it's halved in the time that vaping has taken off. So taking as read that we don't want young people vaping en masse, the health benefits from vaping are very clear, and we really shouldn't do anything that stops those health benefits from being accessed by adults who should be allowed to make their own choices.
Why do you think, Tom, is it that the Prime Minister seems not to understand that strain of conservatism? Power of the individual over the state, power to make our own decisions. Your nation will not come in and control your private affairs. Now, telling us that we cannot buy these vapes at all now, from now on, it's the opposite of conservatism. Why is it that Rishi does not understand that this kind of interfering goes against the grain with Tory voters?
Well, I think there's a lot of people in politics who don't understand it. Unfortunately, this is one of those things where all sides of the House of Commons basically agree on this stuff. I mean, it was originally Wes Streeting who was floating the idea of this cigarette ban, which is going to be phased in before the Tories picked it up. And I think there's just, it's the unfortunate fact that that kind of strain of belief in proper old-fashioned liberalism, those kinds of values around what you do in your own time to your own body, which affects no one but yourself, is really no business for the state. It's just been entirely lost. It's been lost in the Tory party, certainly, but across politics in general. So, and even when we talk about the sort of Tory libertarians, they're relatively few in number and have not really ever been able to mount anything like a convincing challenge to all of this. So regrettably, it's just a political tradition which is pretty thin on the ground these days, I think.
What I can't do is square the circle on this, because I think there are certain things that probably should be banned, like children having access to adult material online, like people buying knives and using them on the street, like yobs covering their faces, going about on bicycles. There are certain bans that might say, well, this brushes up against adult freedoms, but clearly have a grounding in protecting children, protecting society at large. I can't see how this falls into that category, and yet that sort of stuff's not being done. And pettifogging around vaping is.
I think that's exactly right. At the very least, you'd hope there was a kind of overwhelming evidence that this might help towards a certain end. It's just that evidence is just not there, which is why you have had Cancer Research UK, Action on Smoking, come out and say that this is not backed up by the studies that we have and that it could easily be counterproductive. And I keep going back to that point. It is already illegal for a 14-year-old to go into a shop and buy a disposable vape. It is also worth noting that these flavours and this packaging and so on are things that are bought by adults as well. People don't, on the whole, like tobacco-flavoured vapes or plain flavoured vapes. All of the flavours and so on that people hear about are things that adults are buying too. It's often just because you've got politicians who just don't happen to engage in these things, happen not to like vaping or whatever, who are legislating on behalf of everyone else. So it's only going to be negative consequences, not just for personal freedoms we've been talking about, but also for health. And that's why I just don't understand why any sensible government could support this.